Just moments after Lando Norris secured a front-row start in Abu Dhabi, the FIA dropped a bombshell: his McLaren is under official investigation. An unexpected ERS deployment spike during Q3 triggered alarms. It's a pattern that doesn't match Piastri's car or McLaren's declared setup. If the FIA rules this as a violation, Norris could lose his qualifying result or face disqualification entirely before race day even begins. Subscribe now, because this isn't just a rules issue. This could flip the championship on its head before a single light goes out in Abu Dhabi. The moment Lando Norris stepped out of his McLaren after qualifying in Abu Dhabi, the energy inside the garage was electric. He had just secured a front-row start and looked like a legitimate threat to challenge Max Verstappen on Sunday. But less than an hour after Q3 ended, the celebration turned cold. The FIA issued a formal notice of investigation into Norris's car, citing a suspected irregularity in the ERS deployment system during his final lap. The news blindsided the paddock and left McLaren scrambling to protect its biggest result of the season. The investigation was triggered by telemetry flags generated during Norris's last run in Q3. Specifically, data showed a sharp and unexpected spike in electrical energy deployment through Sector 2, far exceeding the typical ERS output seen in both his earlier laps and those of his teammate, Oscar Piastri. What raised suspicion wasn't just the peak value, but the timing and location of the energy release. It occurred at a point where McLaren's declared power map was expected to be conservative to preserve battery state for Sector 3. FIA compliance systems immediately isolated the lap for further review. The anomaly showed up as a deployment rate that didn't align with the pre-approved control map submitted under park-firm conditions. And under F1's strict hybrid rules, energy deployment cannot be manually adjusted during qualifying unless it follows a pre-declared algorithm. The fact that Norris's car appeared to deliver more power, more quickly, through a non-linear torque curve in that zone placed his lap under direct regulatory scrutiny. As the FIA moved quickly to retrieve full power unit logs, McLaren engineers initiated a parallel investigation of their own. The team's official position was that Norris's performance was entirely within legal parameters attributed to cleaner tire preparation and more precise throttle application. But sources inside the team confirmed that engineers found the deployment rate to be near the upper edge of what was expected from the declared map. That language alone has added weight to the FIA's case and triggered internal concerns. Team principal Andrea Stella was seen leaving the FIA garage late into Saturday night, accompanied by two of McLaren's senior powertrain engineers. No public statement was issued, but media duties for both Norris and Piastri were immediately suspended, an unusual move that signals just how seriously the team is treating the investigation. Even Red Bull and Mercedes personnel were spotted monitoring the situation, recognizing that any penalty to Norris could dramatically alter the front-row dynamics heading into the final race of the season. The implications go beyond a single qualifying result. If the FIA rules that Norris's energy system delivered more power than legally allowed, even unintentionally, it could result in a grid penalty or full exclusion from qualifying. That would push Norris down the order and hand a strategic advantage to rival teams. For a car that was already showing signs of long-run pace stability, a front-row start could have been decisive. Now, that entire race plan is in jeopardy. This situation has placed McLaren in one of its highest-pressure technical audits of the year. The team must now prove, down to the last algorithm and battery deployment cycle, that everything was within spec. If they fail, the consequences will echo far beyond Abu Dhabi. Norris's most competitive qualifying performance of 2025 is now surrounded by doubt, and unless McLaren can defend every line of data, this investigation may derail the momentum they've built since mid-season. Lando Norris's Q3 lap at Yas Marina was one of the sharpest of his career on the stopwatch, at least. Clocking a time of 1 minute, 23 seconds and 394 thousandths, he pushed himself onto the front row, narrowly behind Max Verstappen and ahead of Leclerc, Russell, and his own teammate, Oscar Piastri. But what looked like brilliance in timing sheets turned into controversy when sector-by-sector analysis revealed gains that couldn't be entirely explained by tire prep or driver execution alone. The most dramatic gain came in Sector 2, particularly between turns 8 and 11. Norris's mini-sectors showed a 0.3 improvement compared to his own Q2 run despite similar track temperatures, wind direction, and engine mode. No other top 10 driver found such an isolated leap in this part of the lap. The FIA's data highlighted this segment because it's where ERS deployment transitions from linear output into peak assist. The fact that Norris's car surged in this precise zone triggered suspicions of overdeployment or mapping deviation. Comparing Norris's data to Oscar Piastri's only deepened the questions. Piastri ran within one car length of Norris in the final run of Q3, on equal tire life, fuel load, and power unit settings. His Sector 2 gain was just under 1/10 what most engineers would expect given natural track evolution. But Norris's car, according to deployment logs, released stored energy over a shorter interval and delivered earlier peak torque, giving him a speed delta of nearly 4 km/h on exit from turn 10. That's a significant margin in modern F1. Throttle traces offered further insight. Norris was able to apply full throttle consistently 6 to 8 meters earlier exiting turns 9 and 10 despite using nearly identical steering angle and brake release timing. Normally, early throttle application would risk traction loss unless the car is delivering torque in a smooth curve. But in Norris's case, the torque spike was abrupt. Engineers from multiple teams flagged this pattern because it resembled an override trigger, a non-linear deployment ramp not seen in prior sessions. ERS deployment patterns are meant to follow declared templates, which are locked after FP3 under park firm rules. McLaren's own data from Q1 and Q2 showed Norris using a steady, progressive deployment across Sector 2. But in Q3, his ERS map appeared to front-load the deployment, releasing more energy earlier in the lap. That allowed for greater acceleration in the mid-corner exit phases, which, combined with a clean tire phase, resulted in the lap time jump. However, that front-loaded profile wasn't declared pre-session, which is why the FIA is now examining internal map documents. Even minor differences in deployment timing can result in major lap time advantages. According to performance analysts in the paddock, a 7-meter gain in full power application can translate to over 1/10 of a second in lap time, especially when combined with optimal battery state and reduced wheel slip. If Norris's car gained this advantage through a legal driver-triggered scenario, there is no penalty. But if it was programmed differently from the declared file, it could breach Article 5.2.7 of the technical regulations, which governs power unit deployment uniformity. Ultimately, this isn't just about one lap. It's about repeatability, legality, and trust. If Norris's Q3 performance was based on energy behavior outside of approved limits, even if by software error his front row start could be nullified. And for McLaren, the challenge now is to prove that this data spike was a quirk of driver execution and not a breach of the rulebook. Because if they can't, the FIA won't hesitate to act. And that action could strip Norris of his strongest qualifying result of the season. In modern Formula One, ERS or energy recovery system sits at the heart of performance management. This hybrid component captures energy under braking and redeploys it during acceleration in the form of additional electrical power. But because of its influence on lap time, its behavior is heavily restricted under FIA rules. Once a car enters qualifying under park firm, teams are locked into pre-declared energy deployment maps. These maps are submitted in advance and detail exactly when and how much energy can be deployed in each lap segment. The reason for this restriction is to ensure fairness and to prevent mid-session power boosts that could skew qualifying results. Any deviation from these preset maps, whether through manual override, unintended software trigger, or mapping inconsistency, can be considered a breach of Article 5 of the technical regulations. This rule governs hybrid system conformity, and it's the article now central to the FIA's investigation into Lando Norris's Q3 lap. His ERS behavior, particularly in Sector 2, appears to have stepped outside of the predefined envelope. One of the key concerns for the FIA is nonlinear deployment. Normally, deployment ramps are progressive and smooth, designed to provide predictable torque curves. In Norris's lap, telemetry suggests a sudden torque rise, resembling a front-loaded deployment mode where energy is delivered earlier than expected. If this wasn't the result of driver input or normal variation, it would imply either a mapping discrepancy or a triggering logic that should not have been active. That's precisely the kind of infraction that can lead to exclusion from the session. From a technical standpoint, the FIA is now comparing McLaren's submitted deployment map with the telemetry extracted from Norris's car. They will examine the delta between torque request and energy output to determine whether the power unit obeyed the programmed constraints. If Norris's car provided extra assistance beyond what was defined, even momentarily, it would constitute an illegal system override regardless of whether the driver intended it. It's not about intent. It's about system compliance at all times. What adds complexity is the role of software logic in modern deployment. ERS strategies are governed by dynamic algorithms that react to driver input, car speed, and battery charge. These algorithms are allowed to adapt within certain ranges, but any hidden subroutines, conditional triggers, or legacy code from prior sessions that alters behavior without FIA approval are illegal. This is where McLaren must now prove that no such routines were active, and that all deployment conditions were known, fixed, and approved before qualifying began. The fact that Oscar Piastri's identical car didn't exhibit the same deployment profile in Q3 only heightened scrutiny. If both cars ran the same map, why did only Norris experience the torque spike? Either his system reacted to driver inputs in a borderline legal way, or the map was not uniform between the two cars. Under Article 5.4, any disparity between declared systems within a team must be justified, especially in a qualifying session. The lack of symmetry is now a cornerstone of the FIA's case. For McLaren, the challenge is technical, legal, and immediate. They must submit full mapping documentation, deployment logs, control software declarations, and system output graphs all timestamped and validated. If even a single instance of illegal deployment is found, the FIA is within its rights to disqualify Norris from Q3. The team has only hours to mount its defense. And with the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix looming, this investigation could become the defining moment not just of Norris's weekend but of McLaren's entire 2025 campaign.